Welcome, and thank you for joining today's SBA First Wednesday Virtual Learning Series. Before we begin, please ensure you have opened the WebEx participant and chat panels by using the associated icons located at the bottom of your screen. Please note that all audio connections are muted at this time. If you require technical assistance, please send a private chat message to the event producer. You are welcome to submit questions throughout today's conference. You may do so by selecting All Panelists from the drop-down menu in the chat panel. Type your question in the message box provided and hit Enter to send. With that, I'll turn the conference over to Chris Eischen, Procurement Center Specialist. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Candace. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 11th and final session of SBA's First Wednesday webinar series for fiscal year 2020. We want to remind that you, within the email invitation for today's session, we included some SBA guidance and resources regarding COVID-19, so please check that out. Additional information can also be found at www.sba.gov/coronavirus. On to slide 2. For today's session, we'll be focusing on the All Small Mentor-Protege program, and by the end of the program, you should have a better understanding of this topic as well as the resources available to you. If you are new to our event, this is a webinar series that focuses on getting subject matter experts on specific small business topics, such as the All Small Mentor-Protege program, and having them provide you with the valuable information you can use in the performance of your job. We appreciate you taking the time to participate in the FY20 program, and we hope you benefit from today's program. On to slide 3. As Candace mentioned, I am Chris Eischen, and I work as a Procurement Center Representative, or PCR, in Kansas City, Missouri. Additionally, Mr. Charles Mason, who is a PCR in Omaha, Nebraska, will be reading your questions submitted during the program for our speaker to address at the end of today's session. We both work in Government Contracting Area 4, and slide 3 includes our information. On to slide 4. Please note that all lines are on mute. However, you may submit questions or technical issues in the chat box on your screen. Your questions may be submitted anytime during today's session by entering them into the chat box, and these questions will be addressed at the end of our speaker's presentation. To make sure your question doesn't get overlooked, please ensure it is addressed to all panelists on the drop-down menu and not just to one individual. As most of you know, we have transitioned to WebEx and have been informed that some users may experience issues such as a blocked website or other error message when attempting to access the conference login from their computer. If you are affected by this issue, please make sure you dial in and follow along with the slides provided in the email. We will ensure the page numbers are clearly stated so you can follow along. Now, if you are having any other technical issues, please call the AT&T support desk at the following number, 301-250-7202. This telephone number is also included in the email invitation for today's program and on slide 4 of the PowerPoint presentation. For more SBA Small Business Program training and additional resources, please visit SBA Learning Center at www.sba.gov. On to slide 5. Did you know that the Association of Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or APTAC, hosts a website where they post First Wednesday programs? Since these sessions are being recorded, you can re-listen to this program as well as previous sessions by visiting their website, which is provided here on slide 5. Additionally, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or PTACs, are a great resource, and partnering with your local PTAC for an industry day, sharing an RFI notice or a source of thought announcement, or simply referring small business concerns to a PTAC are just a few reasons why they are such a useful resource for acquisition personnel. Please contact your local PTAC for additional information. Slide 6 is the program schedule for fiscal year 2020, and today's session on the All Small Mentor-Protege program is the 11th and final topic in the series for this fiscal year. Some of you have inquired as to why we don't offer a session in September, and the reason is that we understand that most of you are occupied with year-end requirements and do not have time for the training. So in order to use everyone's time more efficiently, we forego the training in September. Now, regarding next year's schedule, we plan to cover some new topics as well as provide new guidance on other areas that have been presented in the past. Please keep an eye out for the FY21 program schedule, which will begin on Wednesday, October 7th. The email invitation for this session will be sent out a couple weeks before the event. On to slide 7. I'm sure many of you will want to receive credit for today's training, so you'll be glad to know that today's session is worth 1 CLP. On the following slide, which is slide 8, you will find the training certificate, and I will go over the instructions at that time. Now, several of you may have received this information for this training from a friend or colleague, but if you want to receive an email directly from us notifying you of upcoming First Wednesday webinar events, please send us an email at sbalearning@sba.gov. In the subject line, please enter the words Add to List, and we'll ensure you're added to the distribution list. On to slide 8, you'll see the certificate. First, you'll need to access the PowerPoint presentation that was emailed to you. Then you will manually fill in your name where it states Insert your name here. Next, within the print settings, you will select Print Current Slide, which will allow for only the certificate to be printed. Once this is done, you can coordinate the CLP achievement through your training program. And another reminder, SBA does not track your CLP achievements or communicate with your training program regarding your CLP achievements for this class. On to slide 9. Today's training has been assembled to educate you on the all-small Mentor-Protege program, as well as provide you with additional SBA resources available for your use. Our speaker has graciously accepted our invitation, and she will be directing me to continue on to the next slide. As mentioned earlier, if you are unable to access WebEx, please follow along with the PowerPoint presentation that was included in the email for today's training. We will identify the page number so you can follow along. Also, please note that some viewers may experience a delay as the slide changes on your screen. Now, I am pleased to introduce today's speaker to you, Ms. K.A. Perkins, who is the Deputy Director for the All-Small Mentor-Protege program. We appreciate that you can meet with us today, K.A., and I'll turn the program over to you now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is K.A. Perkins. I am Deputy Director of the All-Small Mentor-Protege program. Chris, thank you so much for inviting me to speak about our program to the contracting community at large. I hope as you're calling in today that everyone is staying safe and washing your hands and taking care during this unprecedented time. With that, would you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so today I want to talk to you about just kind of an overview of our program for contracting professionals. Before I get into the meat of the presentation, if you will, let's talk about what I'm going to talk about today. I know a lot of us are in fourth quarter, times are busy, and as you're multitasking and trying to get the nuts and bolts of this presentation and take care of your other work, I want to make sure that I point out to you what I'm going to talk about today and then the things that I think that you could really use and take after we're done today. So just in general, I'm going to go over 4 things. So I'm going to give you an overview of our program and just basically talk about the benefits that a protege firm would receive by participating in our program. So that's first. Secondly, I'll talk about eligibility. Included in this section, I will mention something that I think is valuable to many of you, which is the final rule. And I'll explain a little bit of that once we get to that slide. I, of course, will talk about all small eligibility, the application process to get into the program, and then maintaining eligibility. I know this presentation is for you contracting professionals, but it really does help to get kind of a broad view of what our program is like, what protege and mentor firms go into our program, and to remain compliant through their tenure. So that second is eligibility. Third, I'm going to talk about joint ventures. Just some of the rules with joint ventures. In that final rule section, I'll mention some things that are changing with joint ventures with regard to the final rule. And then I'll mention verifying eligibility. And finally, fourth is resources. And these are some of the slides that I think specifically you'll be able to take with you and kind of get some guidance on where to look for things rather in 13 CFR, to whom to ask your questions should you have some, and just, basically news you can use, so to speak. And so with that, Chris, would you mind going to the next slide? Okay, so now we are on slide 11. So first, the overview. Next slide, please, which just talks about benefits, which is slide 12. So specifically, next slide. There are 6 types of business assistance that a protege can receive from a mentor. So this slide basically lists all 6 of those out, including management and technical assistance, financial assistance. An example of financial assistance might be the mentor actually investing some percentage into the protege firm. They are allowed by our regs to invest up to 40%. Third is contracting assistance. I'm sure if any of you have done some type of procurement and come across a joint venture that you're familiar with this, normally you see contracting assistance in the form of a joint venture. International trade education, business development assistance, and administrative assistance. So per 13 CFR 125.9, which is the rule that governs the All Small Mentor Protege program, these are the types of assistance that a mentor may provide a protege. Next slide, please. So now we're on slide 14, and this just kind of gives you a pictorial of the building blocks that a protege can take advantage of in order to gain capacity. So one is business development, as we talked about. So the protege receives some type of guidance from the mentor, and this could be maybe in the form of providing personnel for help writing a proposal. That's an example. Another example I use is oversimplified, of course, but I say, for example, help using QuickBooks. Usually it's way more advanced than that, of course, but that just kind of brings it down in layman's terms as to the type of assistance a mentor can provide a protege. Next slide, please. So on top of business development, of course, a protege may also participate with a mentor and perform on the mentor's contract. And next slide, please. So the third tier, you got business development, subcontracts, and joint ventures. Of course, the protege and mentor can form those joint ventures, and they can do so in our program and qualify as small. So next slide, please. So what's the end result of being able to participate in this program for the protege? Next slide, please. The result is that the protege is able to expand their capacity to bid independently. So in other words, before the program, the protege was able to go after some minute amount of work. They participate in our program. The mentor helps them develop their business. It may include forming a joint venture and going after federal contracts. And as a result of participation in our program, they are able to do more when they leave the program than when they entered the program. And just to give you an overview for those of you who aren't familiar with our program, the All Small Mentor Protege program and the 8A program as well, and they are merging into one. I'll talk about that in a little while. It lasts for up to 6 years. So a protege simply applies to our program. If they are deemed eligible and their application is approved, their tenure automatically renews every year up to 6 years as long as they remain compliant in the program, and unless the protege or mentor decide to terminate that agreement. Next slide, please. So just to give you some stats or perhaps some bragging rights on behalf of our office, we began in just 2016. So we are definitely one of SBA's newest programs. We've been around just shy of the 4-year mark. And from then to now, we have actually approved, I think the last time I checked was 3 weeks ago, so this number is probably a little bit bigger now. We've approved 1,278 mentor-protege agreements. Next slide. Okay, so that concludes that first section about the overview. Now we're going into the second section, which we're going to talk about eligibility. And we're coming up on slides 13 and 14. Those are slides that you'll definitely want to take with you that kind of give you a synopsis of the final rule. Next slide. So let's talk about the final rule. For those of you who do not know, the 8A Mentor-Protege program and the All-Small Mentor-Protege program are merging into a single program. So as it stands right now, you have two programs that have very similar benefits and take up two different spots, if you will, in 13 CFR. The 8A program is governed by, and I have this in the slides, for those of you who have not seen the slides as of before today. They are governed by 13 CFR, I believe 124.520. The combined rule is basically eradicating that portion of 13 CFR, and it's basically putting all of SBA's Mentor-Protege program, if you will, into one single program, which will all be governed by 13 CFR 125.9. And so let's talk about some specifics. So that's kind of super high level. Next slide, please. So what are some of the things that are changing once this rule becomes final? So here's some things internally and then some things that will affect your job as contracting professionals. So one of the things that's changing is we allow for annulment, and let me explain what that is. So a mentor-protege relationship is kind of like a marriage, right? So the protege and mentor are matched. Their wedding, if you will, is the actual application, and that application being accepted. But for a number of reasons, that relationship may not work out. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the 8A Mentor-Protege program and the All-Small Mentor-Protege program, a protege may only have 2 lifetime MPAs. That's it. So if this is a relationship that doesn't work out and it's pretty clear early on, and relatively speaking early on in this case would be 18 months since they're given up to 6 years to work together, if the relationship is not working within that 18 months, then this relationship will not count against the 2 lifetime mentor-protege agreement. So that's one change. Another change, which is a little more internal, just clarifies that a mentor's good character is not required in every instance. So in other words, when we receive an application, our analysts are actually looking at qualifiers for the protege and then some qualifiers for the mentor. And this is just a clarification within our regulations. The third point, mentors cannot submit competing offers. So I've seen, unfortunately, some instances where a mentor, by the way, who doesn't really have a lifetime limit, they usually cannot have more than 3 current relationships with protege firms, but they don't have a lifetime limit like proteges because they're the ones providing the help. That's the thought behind it. However, there have been instances where mentors have abused those relationships and have competed more than one offer on a single procurement with 2 competing protege firms or 2 competing MPAs. So this final rule clarifies that that is something that is not permissible by the SBA. A mentor cannot submit competing offers on a procurement. The point of that relationship is to simply help the protege firms, not to compete them against one another. Next, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, the mentor may not have more than 40% equity in that protege firm. Next, and this has to do with a question that came up during the rulemaking process. There were businesses that wanted SBA to, let's say, create a new group or classification of those small businesses that perhaps weren't disadvantaged, but they weren't a Boeing-size company, if you will. And so they wanted SBA to simply make a distinction between mentors or let's say large businesses that were below 100 million and those that were above 100 million. And SBA simply is not making this distinction. As it's been the many years I've been in government, you have small businesses and you have other than small businesses. And by the way, a small business may also be a mentor to another small business, just to clarify. Next, proteges from Puerto Rico may have up to 5 MPAs. So remember just a little while ago I mentioned that proteges generally may only have 2 lifetime MPAs. Well, because of all that's going on in Puerto Rico, this has been changed in the final rule, allowing them to have up to 5 MPAs. And then finally on this page, and this is something that's a little more internal or procedural, we used to do what we call reconsiderations. So it's kind of a decline that is not final. And so basically what would happen is, let's say a firm applies into our program, we send out a letter saying, hey, we need some more information from you, and we don't hear from that firm. Once we don't hear from them, we used to do like an initial decline, and then a decline after that, and then the firm could even come back up to, I believe, days and ask for a reconsideration. So it kind of kept the firm and our team on kind of this hamster wheel, if you can kind of go with that analogy. So this final rule kind of clarifies that, and it eliminates those reconsiderations. Next slide, please. Okay, and a few other things that are a result of the final rule to come. So this one is pretty important. No JV approval from SBA, including competitive 8A joint ventures. So let me explain this for those of you who do not know. The All Small Mentor-Protege program, so this office, started in 2016, and we have never reviewed joint ventures. We approved MPAs, and then for joint ventures, per our regulations, that is up to the contracting office to approve those joint venture agreements. However, on the 8A side, as it currently stands, if an 8A has an 8A MPA, or even if they have an all-small MPA, their servicing business opportunity specialist, so i.e. the district office, will still review their 8A joint venture. Once this final rule is indeed final and published, this will change so that SBA, including the district office, will not approve joint ventures that are competitive 8As. They will only approve those that are sole source, and that's it. So in other words, virtually every joint venture, with that exception that I just mentioned, SBA will not review and will not approve. So that's pretty important to know. The next point, joint ventures may receive unlimited contracts, and in a 2-year period. So in other words, there's no more 3 in 2 rule. And let me explain that a little bit. So a protege and mentor, they apply to the program, they're approved, they form a joint venture. The rule has been, and the rule currently stands, since the final rule is not yet final, that they can only go after 3 contracts within a 2-year period, with the thought process being that the joint venture is indeed a temporary entity that is formed so that the protege firm may gain capacity. Well, this has become kind of an administrative burden with not only the protege and mentor firms, but also within SBA. So once this rule becomes final, the 2-year period remains, but they may receive unlimited contracts within that 2-year period. So it's still, it being the mentor-protege agreement and the joint venture that comes from that, it's still a temporary entity, but there's no more 3 item or 3 joint venture limit, if that makes sense. And last 2 points, again, no more than 40% equity from the mentor in a protege firm. And also facility security officers may also be administrative personnel. So those are the changes that are coming as a result of the final rule. Next slide, please. Okay. So now we're going to get into all small eligibility. Next slide. Okay, so this just kind of gives you an overview of how a protege firm would get into our program and then how they stay in our program. Okay, so just quickly, these are the things that we are looking at. We need to make sure that the business is a for-profit business. There's no determination of affiliation. They are considered small for their NAICS code. Again, there's that 40% equity rule from the mentor. That would be deemed affiliation, of course. No more than 2 mentors in a lifetime. That's something else we check for. And then finally, that there's no more than 3 protege firms by the mentor, that is, at any one time. So those are the things that we check for. Next slide, please. So as we go from there, we hit the application process. And Chris, I'll just kind of let you catch up with me. I'm not sure if the screen is frozen a little bit. But I think the next slide number, for those of you who might not be able to log in, the application process is slide 17, and I have now gone on to slide 18. So this just gives you an overview.
I'm sorry, was this the application process with 5 steps in it?
It is. You're right on point.
Okay, so this is actually, in our slide deck, it's 27.
27, okay.
Yep.
Got it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that. So now slide 27, and I'm probably going to be off for the rest of these. So I'll try to count off or just continue for number 27, but if I'm wrong, just let me know.
Okay.
So for those of you looking at this is slide 27, and this just gives you a synopsis of all 5 steps. So we always say to prepare ahead. So the protege is going to select their mentor, they're going to register in SAM, they'll apply through Certify, and then they're going to allow for 105 days. So let me explain the 105 days, because on its face, it looks pretty substantial, but there's a lot that happens. So that first 15 days, we're going to take them through stage 1. That's going to be just for screening. Most of the cases that come into our programs, whether it's All Small or HubZone or WOSI or 8A, most of them are incomplete or just incorrect in some fashion. So screening really helps us make sure that we kind of take care of that chaff, let them know what's wrong with those incorrect or unclean cases, if you will, and then let us push to the analyst those cases that are clean so that we can be timely and efficient. So once that application is deemed complete, the analyst then gets it. They have 90 days to process that case. That firm needs to submit, of course, what we call a clean case And this is an older slide, but to contact us for reconsiderations. Thankfully, we are no longer doing reconsiderations. And then the fifth step. So we always ask that the firm remains responsive, especially during this time. You've got those fourth quarter contracts and STARS 3 that are coming out. You have a lot of firms putting in to our program right now. And so we tend to ask that they remain responsive, they keep in contact with us. If they receive a letter from us, that they respond to it as quickly as possible. So this is the normal process for a protege. Next slide, please. And Chris, which number is this for people who might not be able to log in?
This is slide 28.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so you see this one's a little bit different. This is the application process, but this is for 8A transfers. An 8A transfer is a firm that, of course, is 8A. They have a mentor-protege agreement, but they want to transfer that agreement over to our side. So all they have to do is fill out an addendum, gather the necessary documents, which is their existing MPA and their annual review letter, and simply apply through Certify. The processing takes about the same, but there's less work on the front end for them. So next slide, please. Okay, so that's how to get into the program. This is about how to stay in the program. So I'll give you a few slides on this. Next slide. Okay. And Chris, which slide is this?
Slide 30.
Okay, now we're back on track. 30 for me too. Okay, so here are obligations from each party. A protege must submit annual reports, demonstrate materials or developmental benefits, and they must submit quarterly financial reports and certificates of compliance for their joint ventures. A mentor may, or basically have to promise to provide meaningful assistance as described in the agreement. Next slide, slide 31. Okay, and accordingly, SBA therefore reserves the right to terminate the agreement for noncompliance if the mentor hasn't provided that proper assistance. Also, SBA reserves the right to renew the agreement, and this one has actually changed just recently. So we are no longer requiring that they renew their agreement so that they have 3 years in the program up front, followed by another 3 years. We started streamlining our processes so that their MPA renews each year up to 6 years unless SBA terminates it or unless either party terminates it. So next slide. Okay, so the third point. The third point is joint ventures. So this is something that I get asked a lot of questions on by the contracting community, so I kind of wanted to create a bit of a cheat sheet for you to take away. Next slide. Okay, so for me, slide 33. So some joint venture basics. A mentor-protege approval is required prior to the joint venture bid on award. This is something that comes up more than you think. So all this means is that the mentor-protege approval is first, then the joint venture. So why is that? The mentor-protege agreement serves as the waiver of affiliation so that a large and small business together may be deemed small. Or another way of saying it, would take on the size of the disadvantaged business. Those out of order, there is no waiver to affiliation. Therefore, in the case of a small business protege and an other than small business mentor, you have a clear affiliation problem. Next, all small does not review or approve joint ventures. Wanted to make that clear. SBA district offices approve joint ventures for 8A contracts. And again, when the final rule is indeed final, this will only be for 8A sole source. Next, MPA JVs are granted exclusions from affiliation. That's what I was just mentioning when I said that they had to be done in order. MPA first, joint venture second. Next, MPA-JV contracts awarded are limited to the 3 and 2 rule. That is how it stands currently. When that final rule comes, unlimited number within 2 years. Then, procuring activities must consider work done individually by each partner to the joint venture as well as any work done by the joint venture itself. And then finally, and again, here comes that pesky 40% rule. Protege firms must perform at least 40% of the work, and mentor firms may perform up to 60%. That's another question that I get pretty often. Next slide, please. Okay, so another question that I get asked quite a bit is, okay, so how do I make sure that when I receive this proposal that this is a current MPA JV that SBA is fine with? Well, of course, I can talk to you about the MPA portion of it, but we do not, again, approve joint ventures. Next slide, please. So with that being said, there's a few ways to go about it. So one is the protege firm can simply give you a copy of their welcome letter. Now, that's the letter that they received the moment that their application was approved. However, as you might suggest or think, well, that doesn't tell me if something happened after the fact, and that's true. So next, an active list of mentor-protege agreements. In this slide deck, I actually, I believe I hyperlinked it. All Small has a monthly updated list of active mentor-protege agreements. So that is another way to check. But just to make sure that everything is on the up and up with that mentor-protege agreement so that you can make sure you actually have that affiliation waiver, just contact us. So, and as I say to the right of this slide, while all three options are good, a welcome letter alone or even an active list may not capture a recent termination. And because of that, simply drop us a line at either of those email addresses. That allsmallmpp@sba.gov is our main inbox. I check that at least weekly. If it is something that's of an urgent matter, do not hesitate to contact me, and that is my email address. I go by KA, but my name is Kanika, kanika.perkins@sba.gov. Next slide, please. Okay, so I told you we were going to talk about 4 things. We've gone through 3 things, and this is the 4th. So the last section that we're going to talk about, or the last topic, if you will, is resources. So I wanted to make sure, again, that you guys were able to walk away with some news that you could use. Next slide. So I created a few pages here for guiding regulations. You know, as a former 1102 myself, I really didn't think of or sometimes care about anything that was outside the FAR. That has since changed greatly since joining SBA and since learning so much about what SBA does in the world of federal procurement. So these are things that I didn't know when I was in contracting necessarily, but I want to make sure that you do. Next slide, please.
And we're on slide 38.
Thank you, Chris. So there's 6 sections here, and so I wanted to give an overview of where you can find information that was program specific. So if you notice on here, there's everything from regulations about 8A joint ventures to joint ventures as they relate to service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, to Hub Zone, to WOSB and ED WOSB. What are the rules governing SBA's Small Business Mentor Protege program? That's us. That's all small. And then what requirements must a joint venture satisfy to submit an offer for a procurement or sale set aside or reserved for small business? Those are some of the overarching regs that I wanted to make sure I created some type of of reference for you so that if you ever have a question, you can come back to this and you know exactly where to go. Next slide, please. And the next slide will be slide 39. So this slide has some other information that I think is really important. So limitations on subcontracting, I'm starting at the bottom. Limitations on subcontracting, SBA subcontracting, again, WOSB, small disadvantaged business, 8A and SDB regulations, hub zone, size, and quite frankly, size is one of the most important sections that I think anyone needs to read, as well as ones from my own office, again, which is 13 CFR 125.9. Oh, yeah, and the non-manufacturing rules, which is at the bottom of the page. So these two pages will give you kind of a synopsis of, okay, I have a question about this. Where do I go so I can read a little bit more about it? So those are the guiding regs. Next page. This is a cover slide for all small support. Next slide, please. Okay, slide 41. So these are some other things that I think would be really helpful. One being our website. So if you want to know more about All Small, I tell everyone to go to our site. We even have a video on our site that gives you an overview of how to, and this is for applicants, of course, but how to apply to the program. So that's one way that you can gain support. Another is, remember I was talking to you before about the active list of mentor-protege agreements. Well, this is the actual link. In case you're using Bing and not Google, Google will find you just about anything. But this will take you right to that list. Dr. Derek Brown on our team is the one who actually updates this, and he updates it every month. So that's a really good resource if you're trying to verify eligibility of a mentor-protege agreement. And then something I didn't talk about that I thought would be really helpful is the joint venture guide. So use this link that I have here, and if you have questions about, okay, now SBA is saying that I need to approve this joint venture guide, or you know, I just want to know more about joint ventures and how this is put together and what I need to know. That document, I believe it's in a PDF format. If you just put that link in your browser, or even if you just Google joint venture guide, this document will come up. I think it is an invaluable document to just kind of have in your toolkit and take it out whenever you need it. Next slide, please. Okay, and so finally, I'm going to give you some points of contact. So I gave you a bunch of references, a bunch of info. Now this is how you can get in touch with us. So one place is our main inbox, so allsmallmpp@sba.gov. Next is reach out to me. I was brave enough to put my cell number on there, and that's actually my real cell number. So reach out to me, ask me questions. I take them all day long, from participants, SBA employees, just whomever. So if you have any questions, just let me know. If I am not available, you can certainly reach out to the All Small Acting Director. His name is Stanley Jones, Jr., and that is his work number. And with that, we have about 16 minutes left, so awesome timing on my part. So any questions?
Yes, Kay, thank you for that. I know there's a bunch of questions in there, and as the presentation went on, I know you answered some of those questions. So I know Charles is kind of working through those. But Charles, whenever we are ready, shoot with your first question.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And thanks, Kay, for that presentation. That was awesome. So the first question that we have is, besides the All Small Mentor-Protege program, are there any other teaming programs offered by the SBA or any other federal agency?
That is a really awesome question. So I'm going to answer it a few different ways. So teaming, and I didn't learn this until joining SBA, but teaming is just a general term that means more than one firm coming together to do some stuff, to go after some procurement at its most basic level. So there could be some type of teaming agreement or arrangement, if you will, and that's not necessarily something that needs to be reviewed by SBA. So that's why I kind of want to start there. Then you have formalized programs. So SBA is kind of a premier formalized program that doesn't really focus necessarily on one aspect or one type of procurement or one type of widget or industry. So right now, there's, of course, the 8A Mentor-Protege program, and then you have All Small. They will soon come together as one since they provide very similar benefits. Now, that, of course, is within SBA. So per, what is it, 125.10, I think is a section of 13 CFR. Per that regulation, we are also able to approve some other mentor-protege programs outside of SBA that are specific, and some have authority that are outside of SBA. And some of those programs lie with, off the top of my head, DOD is one. NASA is another one. Homeland Security is a third. FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, that is a fourth. Department of Transportation has one. That is a fifth one. And then there is one more, I believe that's Department of Energy. So to my knowledge, there are 6 other programs out there, and those programs are very specific to their agency's mission.
Great, thank you. So this is a two-part question, and it is, when will the Mentor-Protege and 8A programs merge, and how will that impact current 8A contracts?
Okay. So when that final rule will be published, I'm not sure. I've heard scuttlebutt of this fall. Don't hold me to that. There's a lot that needs to happen between now and then. But hopefully this fall is when that final rule will be indeed final. As far as 8A contracts themselves, and I know this is kind of, just through chat, so I'm not sure of the context of it, but I'm not sure that the 8A contract itself would change. What would change based on this final rule is who reviews joint ventures. And that part I did go over a bit, but just to reiterate, so once this final rule becomes final, All Small will continue to not review or approve joint ventures. We never have, and for the foreseeable future, we will not. What is changing with 8A is at the district office level, district offices or BOSs, Business Opportunity Specialists, will no longer review and approve 8A competitive joint ventures. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thank you. Next question is, if a protege relies on its mentor to perform on a small business set-aside, is the mentor considered a subcontractor and counts against the small business limitations on subcontracting?
Okay, and part of your question got distorted just a little bit. What was the first part of it? My apologies.
Okay, the first part is, if a protege relies on its mentor to perform on a small business set-aside, is the mentor considered a subcontractor and counts against the small business limitations on subcontracting?
Okay, so what I think the question is asking is if the protege and mentor, if they if they have a contract to because I can't hear part of the question. I don't know if it's my phone. Let me see if I can try to answer it.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll try to reiterate. It says, so is a mentor considered a subcontractor to its protege?
No. The short answer, no. And my apologies for not being able to hear the question.
That's
so in a joint venture relationship, it's just a 51-49 joint venture partnership. A subcontracting arrangement would be different, where one of those entities would be the prime, and then they would just sub out to the other. But it wouldn't be it wouldn't be joint. It would just be, for example, if I'm the prime and I'm just using a residential house example, and I'm building a house, it's different if I have a partner who's helping me do that. It's something else if I'm just subcontracting some of the plumbing to another company. So in a joint venture relationship, ordinarily the mentor is not in that instance considered a subcontractor. They are part of an entity, part of a joint venture where the protege owns 51% and the mentor 49%.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question is, can joint ventures put in more than one offer? Okay. So I'm taking it that okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, so, and you might be going in the same direction I was. So I don't know if that's a question as a single entity putting in more than one offer, which the FAR covers. You pretty much look at whatever they submitted last. But I'm wondering if the actual question is regarding two different joint ventures. Do you think maybe that's the question? So in other words, and this was covered in the presentation, a mentor cannot submit competing bids or proposals. So if that's the question,
so they can do more than one. The mentor can submit more than one proposal, but they just can't be competing. So he can't be a mentor to two firms and they're submitting on the same requirement.
Right. And can I add something else to that? Because I feel like maybe this might be part of it too. Because I've gotten this question quite a bit, especially regarding STARS 3. So there's another question that people ask, and they say, well, can a protege put in for STARS 3 and then also put in for STARS 3 as a joint venture with some other firms? The short answer to that is no. And so there's a thought process with that, and just real quickly I'll share it. So the thought process is you're going after a procurement as a joint venture because this is something that you cannot do on your own. That's the reason why you form a temporary entity, is to gain capacity. If you have the capacity to go in for STARS 3, I'm just using that because the solicitation's out. If you yourself have the capacity to go after STARS 3 on your own, why are you going after it in the form of a joint venture? So no, you cannot do both. You must choose one.
Great, thank you. Next question. Never mind, that one has already been answered. Okay, so this next question is, so is the 40% equity a change from the 70% revenue receipts in last 3 years? And I'm taking it that that's in reference to when you stated that the mentor cannot provide more than 40% capacity.
Right. So there were two areas in the presentation where I mentioned kind of a 40% rule, but there are two very different rules. One just had to do with a limit on how much equity a mentor could invest in a protege firm. That was 40%. And then toward the end of the presentation, I mentioned that the mentor could do no more than 60% of the work. The protege could no more than, 40%, so the difference. And so what was the question about the 70% receipts? I missed that one.
Okay, so I'm gonna read the whole question so that because it's written as one. It says, so is the 40% equity a change from the 70% revenue receipts in last 3 years?
No, two completely things entirely. That 40% that's not new. So a number of things that happened with the final rule, just to speak on it briefly, is some of those things have been in 13 CFR for a long time. Some of them are just merely clarifications because they've arisen as issues in one way or another within the agency.
Okay. So another question is, can the mentor and the protege form a second JV after 2 years?
Yes. Yes. And so I asked this question before. So the question that a person usually asks after asking that one is, well, how many? So, I mean, a joint venture is temporary, so how permanent can you make something temporary, so to speak, in a complicated way of asking? I don't think there's been any decision that I'm aware of, GAO or otherwise. If someone else is aware, definitely let me know. But I don't think that there's ever been a determination I am familiar with that says this can only go on for X number of years, X number of joint ventures, or what have you. I don't think that's ever been determined. But, yes, they can form a second one.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question. Mm-hmm. Can a small business that is in a small business or in a all-small mentor-protege JV be subject to the ostensible subcontractor rule if the small business concern is unduly reliant upon the mentor to complete the contract awarded to the all-small mentor-protege JV?
The best answer at this moment is I believe so. I would need to look that one up. I don't like to make up stuff. If I say it, I know it, and I'm confident in it. That one, I would need a few minutes. But off the cuff, I would say yes, but that one's something I'm not completely confident in answering.
Okay. Next question is, right now, the mentor-protege regulations provide that the mentor may terminate the mentor-protege agreement if it wants to leave the mentor-protege program. But what if the mentor wants to terminate the mentor-protege agreement but does not want to leave the program? Can the mentor leave the program and come back in?
Well, let me answer it this way. You're in the program because you have an agreement. So if I'm a mentor and I'm a part of the program, then I have an agreement with one or more protege firms. So I'm not clear on how you could terminate your agreement voluntarily but still want to be in the program. I'm not clear on what that would actually mean. One thing to know for contracting – go ahead. I'm sorry.
What I'm thinking it's saying is if the mentor wants to terminate an agreement with one contractor, can they then start another agreement with another contractor?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The mentor's numbers are not okay, my apologies. Thank you for clarifying that. they are not limited on the number of MPAs they may have. They are only limited on the number of active ones that they may have concurrently.
Okay, so if they have, let's say they have two, okay.
To answer your question, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, so what I think you're going to ask is if they had two of them and they cancel one, and could they get another agreement with another protege? They could. It is also important to note, because I did not put it in the presentation, and I know we're just about, I think we're just about past time. But if there is an actual contract from that joint venture, that contract is still binding, even if they end the MPA. So that's something for the contracting community to know, or just for me to reiterate in case you already knew. So you still have to perform the contract.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the next question is, how do firms submit all small mentor-protege annual reports, as some firms claim no communications from SurveyMonkey or all small mentor-protege office?
So we have a small team, but I call them tiny but mighty. So we actually reach out to our portfolio during their anniversary month, and we give them 60 days to complete their annual evaluation. Because our certified system isn't as robust as we would like, we actually use SurveyMonkey, believe it or not. And we send out the SurveyMonkey link. They complete that survey or that annual evaluation, and if they want a copy of it, we send that to them. If they are not compliant, then we actually terminate them. So we want companies to thrive, but we want companies to, just as any other program, you have to remain compliant. You can't just coach for 6 years.
Okay.
You need to know how you're doing.
Thank you. The next question is, can you briefly touch on if one piece of the JV dissolves in the middle of an existing contract and they choose another partner to complete the remainder of the contract? Is that legal?
I think that, because it distorted a little bit on me again, my apologies. So I think the question is, tell me if I'm wrong, I think the question is if there is a ongoing joint venture contract between a mentor and protege, and one of those parties, say the mentor, wants to cancel that MPA somewhere within the period of performance, what is the consequence to that? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay, so the answer is that contract is still binding. Our program simply provides a waiver to affiliation. They formed a joint venture, they became an entity, and they signed a contract. They are required to complete that contract, period.
And that is both firms.
And that is what? What was the question?
Okay, I said both firms because it's saying
if
one leaves, because I had an instance like this to where one of the firms was bought out by another firm, and trying to figure out, could they replace the firm that was bought out by another firm with another firm? So it seems like this could be that same agency that had that similar situation, or just someone else who has another similar situation.
So, and this does happen more often than you would think. Because we are a mentor-protege program, we handle the mentor-protege side of that. However, beyond just the, both companies are on the hook, yes, I've seen instances where, let's say, the protege, because believe it or not, it's usually the protege firm that gets bought out. That surprised even me when joining the team. So the protege firm gets bought out. They completely dissolve, and they exist no longer, and then the mentor is left with the performance of the contract. The mentor is still on the hook for that, is just the short version. So as I've told 8A firms when I was at the district office level, and as I've told firms at headquarters, be careful who you marry, because you never know where you'll end up.
Great. Hey, thank you for that. Hey, Charles, I'm going to catch you up. I'm not sure if there's any more questions, but we're over on time.
Okay.
So thanks for rounding all those questions up.
Submit the questions that didn't get answered, if you would, please.
Absolutely. And KA has been brave enough. I've got the screen still up. She put her email address out there, phone number. There's 3 resources right there. Also, you are able to submit any questions you have, this program or the program in general, and that can be sent to SBA Learning at sba.gov. KA, thanks again for a great presentation with a number of questions. It was very stimulating, and everyone seemed to be very receptive to the training, so thank you for that.
Glad to hear
all of you, absolutely. And all of those who have tuned in today, thank you for making the FY20 program a great success. We appreciate your continued participation in the SBA First Wednesday program. Please stay safe, and we will see you again next time in FY21. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.